call the November 3rd, 2022 meeting of the Half Moon Bay Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee to order. And so the first item on our agenda is the roll call.
Okay. Committee member Foldenauer?
Here.
Here. Committee member Olson?
Here.
Committee member Ray Dupree? Not here. Committee member Schiller?
Here.
Committee member Standez?
Here.
Vice Chair White?
Here.
And Chair Rendon?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. So then moving on to a review of the agenda, you all received the agenda and attachments via email. Hopefully you had a chance to review it. Any questions or anything that we'd like to move around? Seeing no comments, then we'll move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is basically acknowledging the September 1st meeting minutes. And again, those were included in your packet, and hopefully you had an opportunity to review them. Any edits to the minutes? All right, seeing none, then I think we just basically acknowledge that we've reviewed them and accept them. So then moving on to Roman numeral 2, public forum. So this is for members of the public. For any item that is not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to speak to the committee. Sherry, anybody in the public?
I have one person, but Curtis, if you have anything to say, you can raise your hand. No. So we don't have anybody wishing to make public comment.
Okay, thank you. Moving on then to our agenda items. So Roman numeral 3, the first item on our agenda is administrative items, and this is the BPAC calendar for 2023. And again, hopefully you had a chance to look at it. Pretty standard from what we've done in years past. Any questions from the committee? Maz.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a couple of notes and just see if this is okay with everybody. The first meeting, January 5th, is of the week, is a New Year's week, which would the first is on the Monday. So just want to make sure that that is okay with folks as far as their schedules. And then the other one, of course, is the July 6th, which is 2 days after 4th of July. So other than those two dates, the rest of them looked okay, but just wanted to bring that to your attention if you guys want to make any changes to those two.
Yeah, any comments from the committee in terms of shifting those dates now?
Yeah, I probably can't make the meeting in July. But everything else looks fine to me.
Should we contemplate moving it to a week later, Maz, or
I'm looking at the calendar right now. I think that would be good. Thursday the 13th seems open to me, and I don't think we have anything scheduled for that day other than any other meetings, I mean.
Does the 13th work for the other committee members? Okay, Maz, why don't we just go ahead and make that change then? We'll change the July meeting to July 13th. Do we need a vote to accept the or to approve the calendar? Okay, so I guess we'll need a roll call vote, please.
Committee member Foldenauer?
Yes, approved.
Committee member Olson?
Yes.
Committee member Schiller?
Yes.
Committee member Standez?
Yes.
Vice Chair White?
Yes.
And Chair Rendon?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, the calendar is adopted for 2023. Moving on then to the next item on our agenda. This is the e-bike survey results. And Maz will turn it over to you, or Jonathan.
I'll just do a quick introduction. So we have Jonathan Moon, our assistant engineer, as well as Colleen Letier, our communications program manager. They are both here and have been working on the e-bike survey results. So Jonathan's going to go through the PowerPoint presentation, and Colleen's here to also support with any questions on the survey itself. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jonathan. Thank you.
Thank you, Maj. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and the rest of the committee members. My name is Jonathan Wu, Assistant Engineer for the City of Half Moon Bay. And I'm here to talk to you guys about the e-bike survey results. First off, can you guys see a full screen just to make sure? Awesome. Thank you so much. So just a reminder, the last meeting that we had back in September, we provided an update to the BPAC and the rest of the remaining public that was on the meeting. That we talked about the e-bike survey and it was live. And the reason for that was because the City Council directed staff to conduct the survey to get a little bit more feedback from the public and see what findings we can find and see how the public felt about some recommendations on policies as for what to approve, what to prohibit, et cetera. And so that's what we're here to talk about today. So just an overview of what we're talking about, we're going to discuss the summary of responses that we received, as well as some policy recommendations that we have. And we're looking for the BPAC committee, as well as some opinions from the public too, if possible, to fully understand your thoughts and what we could bring to the City Council. So this survey itself was conducted between August to mid-September of this year, so about a month and a half. And we received a total of 241 responses. And throughout that entire time that people took the survey, our program kind of calculated it out to be about 12.1 hours of public comment. So just based off those numbers that we were given by our program, utilizing a survey rather than through public comments is definitely a beneficial way to proceed with understanding what the public wants or what the public thinks. So just a summary of what the survey was, we had a total of 20 questions, and it asked a range of questions such as the location of residence, which neighborhood, whether if they're in Half Moon Bay or not, the use of the trails within Half Moon Bay, such as the Coastal Trail, Naomi Patridge, East Side Parallel Trail as well, the type of mode that they utilize those trails in, walking, bikes, e-bikes, etc., the frequency, whether they use it daily, whether they use it weekly, monthly, as well as the purpose, whether they use it recreationally or for commute or groceries, etc., as well as safety factors, for example, speed limits, which we'll get a little bit more into later on. Another question that we kind of asked was regarding the allowance or prohibitions of electric motor vehicles in general, and just understanding how the public felt about a potential policy on that. So moving on, I'm just going to go through a few questions. We're not going to go through all 20, but actually not a few, I'm sorry, a majority of the questions that we believe that was important to point out and important to understand. So you can see the first question, are you a resident of the City of Half Moon Bay? Majority of the survey takers were within Half Moon Bay. So a good local amount took the survey and they understand the area and they understand the scene. Another question that we had was to please number the use of these trails that people do or people utilize over their time. So 1 being the most that they use and 4 being the least. So this doesn't really represent the numbers Coastal Trail, Naomi Patridge Trail, and East Side Parallel Trail. Those numbers in order kind of represents the common order of which people utilize those trails. So it doesn't say too much, but it just uses a common trait of responses that we have. So if we move on, another question was the frequency, kind of like I discussed a little bit earlier. A lot of people use these trails on a daily basis, if not more a weekly basis. So that's an important thing to understand and know. And the main purpose that a lot of people use, over 90% of the survey takers utilize it for recreation purposes rather than going to work, school, or doing errands. Majority of the people also likes to walk or run on the trail on a daily, weekly basis. Similar to, not similar to bicycle. What's interesting is that a lot of people don't use that mode of transportation on those trails. They seem to utilize more on walking. And we're just speaking out of majority here as well. So going on electric e-bikes, majority of the survey takers don't utilize e-bikes, similarly to skateboards or scooters that are non-powered. Similarly to electric skateboards or monowheels, as well as electric scooters too. High vast majority of the survey takers don't utilize that type of mode of transportation. So another question that we asked too was, if you ride an e-bike, what type of class of e-bike do you use? And you can see it's kind of spread out. You see a wide range. Majority is using a class 1 bike, but a fair amount of people uses class 2 or class 3, as well as the question that we asked of the fact is speed. Does speed represent a safety factor? And you can see on your screen that 75% of those survey takers did believe that speed was an important factor for the use of those trails. So a couple of more questions were basically just thinking that if the city were to take measures to reduce the speed, is that an important thing to those people? And again, a majority says yes, similar to the question of posting a speed limit, that a lot of people tend to lean towards that. So another question that we asked was about city council considering the use of a maximum speed limit. And a majority of them said about 15%, but it was pretty spread out throughout the three, but a majority did say about 15%. And then that comes to our second to last question, which was...
you mean 15 miles per hour, right?
I'm sorry, what did I say?
You said 15%.
Yes, my apologies. Yeah, 50 miles per hour. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for the correction there. Yeah, 50 miles per hour, 33% did say that. And then that leads us to second to the last question that we had was, should we establish any prohibitions of electric motorized vehicles on these pathways? And about 2/3 of that population did say no, but we should really focus on speed along those trails. So we did ask a question to provide any additional comments, and we did kind of receive a wide range of answers. But a majority of those questions, again, kind of leading towards focusing on speed. In addition to that, was establishing outreach and awareness of trail etiquette. And just focusing on not to prohibit the use of those electric motorized vehicles, to not quote unquote punish those that have that mode of transportation, but just focus on those that speed or drive a little bit recklessly. So it's more about awareness and outreach rather than the type or mode of transportation that people do use. So now it comes to the policy recommendations that city staff has based off of these findings that we have from the survey. One recommendation that we do have is just to allow all e-bikes and other electric motorized vehicles on all paths and trails with a speed limit of 15 miles an hour, and to prohibit the use of gasoline-powered motorized vehicles on all paths and trails. So those are the two policy recommendations, and we'll talk more on the questions and answer side. But just for the sake of time, we'll just move on. So for these next steps, we'll talk a little bit more about it, as I said. From there, from your recommendations, we will go ahead and move forward with drafting an ordinance. We'll present that to City Council. And in addition to that, we will go ahead and move forward with researching educational programs to make aware of others for bike and trail etiquette, as well as coordinate with state parks and counties since we have trails adjacent to them, and to implement safety improvements such as the installation of speed limit signs and other improvements. So it's a step-by-step process to where we need to go, but based off of our findings, we'll go through each step possible to try to adhere to everything that the public would like. With that, that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, Maz, Colleen, and myself are here, and I'll leave it to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. We'll open it up for questions and comments from the committee. See, Brandon has his hand up.
So I've thought about this a lot, and I think the survey was good. I think surveys can get answers that you want, or the survey building is an art. It's really a science on how you do that. So what I gathered from all of this is that everybody's talking about speed. And we've talked about this, I think, maybe 2 or 3 times in this committee before. Like, we're going over it again, which isn't bad. But the way that I see it is everybody in that survey and everybody that we talk about these trails, the real issue is safety. We know that if we put speed limits up, there's no enforcement. That's just a fact. So if it makes us all feel better to have that up there, and I'm not saying that speed limit signs don't have an effect, but let's just all agree that it's like 80% not going to work. So it's just a waste of taxpayers' money, in my opinion, to put that up there. What we need to do is shift our thinking and say, how can we make that trail safer? Because that's really what's an issue here. And the issue of speed is something that's causing unsafe trails. That's what happens. The bikes weave in and out. The people don't know where to stand. They go 3 across the trail. People who walk their dogs, some of them are off leash, which is a whole nother issue in some parts of these trails. And some of them let the leash go across the whole, they move over and the dog's across the place. And now you're going to fall off your bike, whether it's motorized or not. And I was in Dallas a few weeks ago, and they have this major trail that runs like really, I don't forget the name of it, that runs through the downtown and out to the suburbs. And they have a designated bike area. And the bikes were going fast. Road bikers go fast. I'm sorry, I am one. I try to go slow. They just generally don't. And e-bikes are going to go as fast or slow as they want. But if there's a designated area, then that is probably going to have more of an effect on safer trails than putting speed limit signs up and hoping and praying that it all works. So I think if we're talking, I mean, there's many dimensions here that we're talking about. We're talking about public perception. We're talking about trying to actually make a difference, and then what's possible. Putting lines on the trail is possible. I know the trail, especially the coastal trail up front here, isn't that wide. But that's okay, because if you painted a line and you just said, hey, bikers have to be single file, then at least they have a designated area, because bikers are just as bad, because you'll see two bikers biking down that trail together because they're talking. Well, that's not safe either. So I think I would put it out to everyone to say, if we're really trying to affect safety, and speed is an issue of which we can't control, there's another mechanism of separating that trail, all the trails, for a bike lane. And maybe, and the survey, I think, indicated this, the other trails that are up and down Route 1, those are commuting trails for the most part. There are runners, though. I see runners a lot on those trails who use it to run. Maybe that lane's a little bit bigger for two wheels or one wheel or whatever we want to call it. And the coastal trail is going to have to be a little bit thinner or skinnier, because it really isn't that wide, as wide. And we do have more people who use that trail, and especially the tourists who come here for that. So that's a long-winded answer to just put out there to everyone to say, hey, I think the issue is safety, and let's try to come up with something that actually affects safety versus something that we do that maybe looks good or makes us feel good. But sometimes we look at things that the problem we're looking at really, the solution we're looking at or the problem we're looking at is actually something else. So I'll leave everybody with that.
Thank you, Brandon. I have Eric and then Janet.
Yeah, a little bit similar vein as Brendan. I guess what I learned most from the survey would have been that most people do associate speed with safety, but how a plurality were not inclined to particularly lower the speed, and that solution to safety was either people saying no speed limit or 15 miles an hour. Previous discussions, people were saying, trying to slow things down. I guess my question was about the implementation of safety features, and talking about is that what that process is, and what are the solutions that you're thinking of implementing. It kind of sounded like there was going to be like one of those instant feedback, like radar feedback speed things, and kind of feel like that's not really a direction public would like, but I wasn't sure what, if anything had been settled on.
So Maz, can I turn that question over to staff?
Sure, I'm happy to answer. I didn't know if you want me to kind of jump in and answer some of it or wait till you guys finish your comments, but I'm happy to do so. I'll just real quick with regards to the safety concern. I totally agree. Safety is the ultimate product that we're trying to get out of this effort, but we have to also recall that the purpose of this specific ordinance is to mitigate the usage of electric bicycles and other types of electric motorized vehicles, single occupant vehicles like scooters on the trails. And so the information and the data we received from this public survey was to help us decide and determine which direction to go towards as far as the allowance of e-bikes. Because the state's requirements are a little different, and the county and state parks have different areas and corridors, we wanted to make sure we were consistent. And so that was the intent of this item originally, was to look at whether we want, because there was a lot of back and forth, whether we wanted to prohibit a specific type of bike or what the actual concern was. And so a lot of folks did talk about the speed being the issue. And so that's what was, that was the intent of this policy, and the recommendation tonight was to try to determine and the survey was to try to determine which direction we should be going. I agree that enforcement on any policy is always going to be a concern. And obviously there are limited resources on the coast, especially from the sheriff's office with regards to enforcement on trails and public bikeways. So we'll have to continue working on that. Whether it was prohibition on Class 3 e-bikes or the implementation of the speed limit sign, either way, this was something that we were, as far as as far as the enforcement was always going to be a little bit of a tricky subject to work through. With regards to the types of improvements, I think we haven't settled on anything in particular at this date, but our thought was, given that the enforcement was going to be something of an issue, that we would start with utilizing that rules of the pathway type process. So having signs that will say, if you have a dog, keep it on leash, and make sure you're on the right side. Kind of the thought process was that it would be some sort of signage that would go along with the rules of the bike path and how folks should be working with each other. As far as long-term improvements, like widening and additional types of lanes. Those are actually things that have come up in the past. We have our Poplar Gateways plan that is actually being reactivated to go through the environmental process. That project looked at the feasibility of the types of uses that we have on the coastal trail from Poplar to Kelly. And as part of that, the original plan actually does have 2 or 3 different pathway options for the different types of users. Because of the amount of folks that utilize that facility. So there's been a lot of feedback with regard to that. So I don't think that's anything that has changed since that project started up. And I think with the e-bikes, it only becomes more of a concern and more prevalent for our discussions. So I think from that perspective, that's kind of in a nutshell. We have a couple of different pieces. This tonight is we're talking about the policy recommendations with regards to the e-bikes, but long term, obviously, there will be more discussions on the types of improvements, what that signage looks like, and we've had some conversations with past BPAC groups with regards to the signage, and I think it would be appropriate to bring that back to you folks and take another stab and get some of that those signage that will help folks understand what they should be doing in different situations.
Thank you, Maz. Janet.
Brandon mentioned the idea of creating separate paths for different uses. But I think a first step might be just to divide down the middle what we already have. Unfortunately, there are large sections of the trail that need a lot of maintenance. There was an article in the Half Moon Bay Review, I think this week, talking about the fact that parts of the trail are falling off onto the beach. And those are the sections that are the most dangerous for pedestrians and bicyclists combined. So I would urge you to, as perhaps even an interim measure, create the types of, dashed yellow line that reminds people that there are others on this trail and that it is a shared use trail. As we get into the signage, I think it's important to remind people frequently in signs that this is a mixed use trail, that everybody needs to be responsible citizen in what they're doing. And perhaps one of those triangles spelling out who has right of way when there's any question about it. Another important thing is to mark blind curves. So there's this one particular blind curve that I'm thinking of that I always try to sound my bell just to let anybody know in case there's somebody on the other side of the curve that I'm coming around, suggesting to bicyclists that they slow down on the blind curve, sound your bell on the blind curve. announce yourself as you're passing people, finding ways to communicate with the general public about what trail etiquette might be, and defining that etiquette clearly so that everybody who wishes to be a good citizen can attempt it. So that's what I think is part of the value of speed limit, even if it's not enforced, is to let people know this is what's expected of you. Try to achieve it. This is the goal. So, we have a path that needs a lot of work, but what we should do is make sure that we're communicating about what the expectations are for what we currently have. And then as the path evolves over time, make sure that the signage is in place and the expectations are clear. I like the idea of allowing all types of e-vehicles. I am concerned that those e-vehicles that have a throttle present the greatest danger because they tend to go the fastest. And that's just my instinct on it. I don't have any, scientific or any survey findings along those lines. So just wanted to throw all that out there, and thank you very much for your efforts in this area.
Thank you, Janet. I see Brandon has his hand up again.
I just want to clarify, I agree that I wasn't suggesting that we build a new path because I know that that's time and money that we don't have. I'm just saying exactly what you're saying, and whether it's in half or the right third, or maybe it has to be on right and left, but somehow you just paint a line that says vehicles are on the right-hand part of the trail and the people who walk are in the middle. And because we have a sorting problem right now, there's a sorting problem. And Maj, to what you've said to remind us about what we're really voting on or guiding on tonight, I'd suggest that you can't, this is how a lot of organizations, cities, companies, families, people get into bad places by making very binary decisions or making them without doing the hard work around the rules. I'm okay with all motorized vehicles. I will warn you that there's electric motorcycles coming out now. And I wonder how you're going to tell the Harley Davidsons that are coming and these motorcycles that they're not allowed on there. But I put that out there to say, somebody's got to think about that, because it's not going to be a speed limit issue. You're going to have to figure out how, I don't know what it's going to be. Having said that, you can't say, okay, well, we agree with all electric vehicles without the rules to help. Otherwise, we're just making this decision in a vacuum for some reason, and we're going to be back to the drawing board. So I'm not a fan of passing things in a vacuum without the support mechanisms and SOPs or rules, standard operating procedures, whatever you want to call them, around supporting saying that we want that, because it's just going to be a total mess. And we're not solving anything. We're just appeasing a simple answer to say, sure, let's have e-bikes on the trails. We haven't sorted them. Safety's going to be worse. You got to do all the hard work along with it. And, until that happens, I'm in support of electric vehicles, but not without fixing the trails so that people don't get hurt. Over.
Thank you, Brandon. Other thoughts from the committee?
Hey, Mario, I have my hand up. This is Aaron.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. I hadn't seen you. But
yeah, no problem. I just want to say, I agree with everything Janet said. And regarding fixing the trail, I'm in favor of the, allowing the electric bikes imposing the speed limit, having the signage. I like all the Janet's ideas regarding the signage. And just to Brendan's point about fixing the trail, I mean, I know that's in the works, right? And at some point that there's going to be a multimodal trail in Half Moon Bay's jurisdiction. So I think it's just a matter of time. And like this is sort of, yeah, like there will need to be some revision, but you know, I think we can put this in place and then address that as, you know, the new trail is designed. Just a thought or a comment.
Thank you, Aaron. Other committee members? Okay, seeing none. So listening to what all of you are saying, and I'm not a biker, so I take you all as the subject matter experts on these topics. And I guess I'm going to kind of Brandon's thoughts and views, and I mean, yeah, I totally understand what Brandon is saying, and then I also put on my policy hat that sometimes things have to go incrementally, and so the first step is, you know, okay, are we going to allow the e-bikes and yellow electric vehicles, and setting a speed limit, and then seeing how that works, and then we have to come back and tweak it, and it's annoying and it might upset folks, but you know, for those of you that might be familiar with design thinking, that you produce something, you test it, it fails, you go back, and then you have to redo it again and do it again until you get that optimal product out. And I'm maybe that's a bad analogy, but I'm thinking that this is what it might have to take with this policy. Anyway, those are my limited thoughts. Maz, do you need a vote from the committee on the recommendations?
I think it would be good to get a vote, at least on this specific topic with regards to the policy. I will say that we can certainly take a look at other examples from other jurisdictions and see if we can implement other pieces to this policy recommendation as well, outside of just the speed limits. So I'll take a closer look. I hear you folks, and I'll take a closer look and see if there's other pieces of information we should be incorporating into this policy. Obviously, the enforcement still is a challenge, but at least we could have it in the policy. And just like the speed limits, it would be something that we could, you know, put out there in the public with signage and whatnot. But yeah, as far as the versus the e-bikes speed limit versus the type of bike, I think that would be great if we could get a vote on that.
Okay.
I move to accept the policy recommendations as shown on the screen right now.
Thank you, Janet. Is there a second?
I'll second.
We got a second from Eric. All right, we'll take a roll call vote, please.
Committee member Foldenauer,
Yes, I agree.
committee member Olson,
Yes, agree.
committee member Ray Dupree,
Yes.
committee member Schiller,
Yes.
committee member Standez,
Yes.
vice chair White,
Yes.
chair Rendon.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Thank you, everyone. And I know this is not the last we're going to hear of this, so it'll come back to us in some fashion in the future. All right, thank you. Good discussion and conversation. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. This is item 3C, the CCAG micro mobility study discussion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to open up a quick PowerPoint. So for folks that we did send out this micromobility document out a little earlier, and I just wanted to bring, we do have some information from our friends at CCAG with regards to this pilot program, and so I just find the document and get it over for you guys. Sorry, 1 second. right. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, so the San Mateo County has been doing some work on a shared micromobility feasibility study. And so I'll just read a little bit about from the executive summary, and we can go through the slides. And really, what I wanted to do is bring this document to your attention. I'm reviewing it on our end as well, and we want to make sure that we provide comments on this draft feasibility study. So what is shared micromobility? It's an umbrella term for lightweight human or electric powered vehicles that are operated as a fleet and can be accessed by the public for use. There's many forms of micromobility vehicles. The CCAG study focuses specifically on bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters, which are pretty common. And these services have expanded across the world, and their technologies and ownership structures have been changing and developing pretty rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years, as a lot of you folks may know. And so the purpose of this was to have a more systematic process established for micromobility within San Mateo County. Some of the concerns that we've heard from other jurisdictions have been, who services them, how are they serviced, are they dumped and left in odd places, how do they get charged and picked up? And so CCAG took this approach with a lot of different jurisdictions, unsure about the direction they were going, and put together this feasibility study that's out for public review. Oops, it's zoomed in too much. So they've been working. CCAG has been working over the last few months, doing some analyses. They've been reviewing other best practices from other jurisdictions, and they put all that together to create these program guidelines and recommendations. And that's essentially what is this draft plan that was sent to you folks under separate email yesterday. And so what the CCAG model is talking about is having a governed system by committee of the participating jurisdictions. In CCAG, it's the county as well as all of the cities within the county of San Mateo are stakeholders and part of the group. And the thought would be that that there would be a committee, whether it be a part of that or a separate type of committee. That was a thought process, is to have a more board type level of oversight. It would also, they're also looking at having essentially managed by a program manager. So again, this would be rather than having multiple different types of businesses coming through and licensing with each different agency, they would come through and do a more centralized licensing through CCAG that would require, we'll go through it a little bit more, but it would require, agency MOUs up front. And so it would be more of a streamlined approach, but it also would give some consistency to what folks in San Mateo County would see as far as micromobility. There's also a limited period pilot program that they're starting up, and we'll talk about a little bit more. That'll be interesting to see how that works. I think that information will feed the decision making process quite a bit as far as how it's worked, what worked well, what didn't work. And then there'll be an ultimate RFP procurement process to essentially select a vendor or vendors that would be licensed to operate within the San Mateo County area. So what's changed from some of the older drafts, again, is really the program manager and having this more centralized type of oversight. Again, it's a countywide program scope. They want to allow the ability for these to be seamlessly used across multiple jurisdictional boundaries. And in order to do so, they thought that it would be better to have this general oversight by CCAG and the CCAG board on these types of projects. And ultimately, all of this is for the purpose of reduction of greenhouse gases and vehicle miles traveled. So as they've selected, there was a number of multi-jurisdictional markets for the pilot project, and the CCAG and the CCAG board ended up selecting 2 specific areas. One is the Redwood City and North Fair Oaks area on this part of your screen, and then the other one was Daly City, Broadmoor, and Colma up here. So the couple of things, they wanted to make sure that they were in dense urbanized areas, also close to transit centers such as BART and Caltrain, to really see it in action in some of these higher populated areas. So the way that they've been doing it is, so as far as the different service areas, they have deployment. They're looking at doing vehicle deployments in some specifics highlighted areas, and based on their initial understanding of use and need. And what would happen is this pilot program would be limited to this smaller region. So the the equipment, the vehicles wouldn't be transferred beyond that, which allows it to see how it works within the smaller jurisdictions, but not have that larger impact as far as trying to chase down, these scooters and bikes all over the county under the pilot program anyways. And so that's the only challenge with this pilot program, is that users would only be able to ride within those jurisdictions. But again, as far as the pilot goes, those were some of the parameters that had to be in place in order to move forward with this. And same thing with the Redwood City North Fair Oaks pilot area. Again, same process. And then beyond that, once they get that feedback from those pilots, the next phase they're considering is to do an additional pilot program options. They're looking at 3 to 4 and try to expand the amount of. So basically, try kind of do like a slow rollout of this program, so that they're not having it start up on the entire San Mateo County area as a whole, but to start slowly building out from these pilot locations. And again, their scoring rubric was based on density and transit use. And so overall, they're looking at continuing this expansion in the next phase to the different jurisdictions, as well as other pilot areas and scenarios. And you can see some of them are a little larger. So they're looking at tackling East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, or San Mateo and Foster City, some of these larger grouped urbanized areas. So they've put together some general cost scenarios and what it would require. They've done some high level analyses regarding, obviously you have your no action, which is nothing, but you're not getting any benefit from it. The last one is of a more of a fully publicly owned system, which would require a lot of different, creation of jobs, purchasing of equipment, finding storage locations. So essentially, they've looked at kind of 2 areas, 2 option scenarios. The first one is this regional program oversight with contract management, and then the other one would be more of a subsidized system, where CCAG and the county and cities would subsidize some of these users that would be these vendors that would be coming in. These will still be, these are things that are also going to be studying as part of the pilot. So we'll see how, what data they bring back from there. So again, this is just the general breakdown of what the draft plan entails. The executive summary is a couple of pages, and it's a quick read, and it'll give you a good understanding of what the overall program is trying to accomplish. But obviously, there's quite a bit more pieces to it. And if you look at the full document, you've got a number of appendices that have some performance metrics and measures that go into a little bit more detail. So as far as the next steps, they're looking to identify a program manager to help come on CCAG staff and start running these pilot programs. Again, looking at some of these definitions, defining some of these pilot areas and expansion of those, and then ultimately, once we get the committees and land use and use agreements established with the different agencies, then they'd look at looking at more opportunities to fund these programs, and then look at finalizing the program. So they're really trying to keep it more of an open process, given that there's lots of different changing technologies and users that are coming through. So it's an interesting way that they've approached this particular topic, a little different than they have in other areas. But I think it makes. I think it shows the amount of thought that has gone into these pilot programs from the CCAG staff side, and what they're trying to accomplish as far as a system that would be palatable by all the various jurisdictions within our county. So here's just a draft timeline. So again, one thing that's not here is the due date for the draft document, the draft feasibility study is due on the 7th. I'm still reviewing and providing comments. If anybody has, based on tonight and your feedback, I can add to those comments, or if you have questions and concerns, you can reach out to me independently as well. But as far as the overall governance committee and the next steps for this larger program, again, here is this timeline. They're looking at spring of next year for the recruitment of the staffing required for the oversight, and then this governance committee establishment, and then they'll look at the bylaws and creating those joint agreements, and hopefully by the end of the 2023, we'll have a contract with an operator, and then they'll have a 2-year pilot to see how all of this goes in those jurisdictions. So yeah, here's again, the draft plan was released for review. Comments are due on the 7th. There is going to be opportunities for these folks to come and present to different city councils. I will also talk to them about coming and talking to our BPAC. I think it makes sense for them to reach out to just to other groups as well as the city council, and we'll see how that goes. And then their goal would be to present final plan for adoption in December. I have some contacts here as far as the folks that did it. So again, CCAG, we have a couple of CCAG staff members, as well as the consultant team, also planning and design, that helped them with this pilot program. That's it for my quick overview and presentation. And I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you, Maz. Questions from the committee?
I think just like how would this impact the coast side? I know the coast side was mentioned. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So as far as the coast side goes, we've been approached by different vendors, and I think a lot of the other jurisdictions it's been in the same boat. Each company kind of has been reaching out and asking to partner with us, and we've had some folks that were really interested, but really didn't have any, they wanted to come and operate, but they didn't really have any of the background as far as, they didn't have, the business wasn't set up to really track these things down, and they didn't have the folks available to actually remove them and move the things that are just kind of left in different areas. So that's some of the things that we want to see how it plays out in the more densely populated areas, because it would be easier for them to do it in those locations. And then ultimately see how it works out in a coastal region. Hopefully by that point, they've fleshed out some of these issues. And part of the governance committee oversight would be looking at some of those operational concerns. Because what we don't want to do is introduce these, equipment and, especially battery powered equipment, and then finding them in the creek, for example. I mean, that would be absolutely one of the worst things you could think of, as far as the use and the amount of, the money that goes into those pieces. So That's what I would say is from our perspective, it would be good to see how it works in those densely populated areas, and then ultimately, I think one of the next pilot programs should be looking at a more coastal region, and to see how it works, because we definitely have the need for it, and I think with the thoughts of reducing the amount of vehicles driving over 92, if we have these micro mobility pieces, people might be more willing to take the public transit if they can get around easily once they get to our to get to the coast side. So those are some of the thoughts that go behind it. And again, that's the pilot is helpful to us because we can kind of see it in action, see how it works, and get feedback from those local jurisdictions that are on the ground and seeing what's going on.
Thanks, Maz. Other questions from the committee? Brandon.
Quick question. So if San Mateo County passes it countywide, can each city say no, or do we have to allow it?
I think their goal would be to have everybody approve it. I don't think it's a absolute requirement that we approve it. There are cases where CCAG has implemented certain measures where not every jurisdiction signed on to. So I don't know if that is. I don't know. I don't think that will change. I mean, there's nothing that's going to make us get involved. But that's why they want to go through this more upfront process to kind of show the benefits and give us something that hopefully would work on a countywide system. It's still to be determined, obviously, based on the pilot programs. But yeah, there's no requirement that we would have to join this, and I would be. And that might be some of the comments that I share with them, as well as, those are some of the questions I had was, do we have to do it? If we don't do it, can we still contract with other parties? I mean, there's a lot of questions about operators and users and fair practices. So there's a lot of questions I still have that, that I'll be commenting on. So we'll hopefully learn more.
And with this, sounds interesting. I'm largely for it, but I thought it would be particularly needed on like Pumpkin Festival weekend or any day over, say, 85, where parking can be of Dunes Beach and Jones Beach can be used and have people come into town and then back. Is there an advantage to having this program used on specific days as opposed to a year-long program?
Great comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I was thinking along those lines that this is like a great visitor serving opportunity. And then I'm channeling back to our previous conversation about the trail and speed and potentially an education opportunity, right? As these bikes are being used, like however it's done on the app or whatever, like, hey, you're in Half Moon Bay, you're using these trails, here are the guidelines, here's what you have to abide by. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead. But Maz, I had a question in terms of, if I understood correctly, as the pilot is rolling out, CCAG would be the program manager with the committee would be selecting the vendor or vendors. So this would be like a Lime or others that have kind of been trying for a few years. So is that's the idea? And then those would be like the approved vendors for all the jurisdictions that are participating.
Yeah, that's correct. And I mean, that's similar on a different area, but CCAG also has their the traffic model that's shared with the VTA for traffic impact analyses. And in that model, they have a pre-qualified list of consultants that can operate. And so this would be, the way that it's laid out, it would be a very similar situation. It wouldn't be, I don't think it would be just one, but you would have a list of vendors that would most likely be participating. But yeah, those are some of the questions I have as well. And hopefully that it'll be flushed out with more conversations with the CCAG staff.
And then question related to that. So then there was a slide that was talking about the costs, and there was a subsidized version. So once the vendor is selected, the vendor operates, I as a user still have to have the app or whatever mechanism to use the vehicle, but I'm paying for it. or is there some subsidy that goes to the vendor that reduces the cost for the user?
Those were some of the thought processes. I don't know if it's been. I don't think I was reading through it. I don't think it's been fleshed out completely yet. But there's that was kind of the thought process. Obviously, you want to make it. You want to have equity in here, so for folks that have low income, you want to subsidize some of those. But at the same time, we also want to promote the ridership and reduce the amount of single occupant vehicles. So that would be part of it. It's similar to what CCAG does with other ride sharing programs like commute.org that provides different types of services and kind of last mile completing of trips between transit and the hubs. And so I would see, I can foresee that being a part of that. CCAG does, as part of the membership dues that the different jurisdictions provide, we do subsidize some of these other programs. So that's why I would think that might be one of them. But again, part of the pilot is to kind of see how that looks, because if the ridership's not there because it's too expensive, then it doesn't, it won't really make sense. So at some point it may require subsidy so that we can get the benefit of the reduction of greenhouse gases and all these other pieces.
And I would think that one of the, indirect outcomes of a program like this would be more improved bike ped infrastructure.
I think so. Absolutely. I mean, with these types of additional users, if it does start seeing an increase in the use, then yes, absolutely. And I'll talk more about projects at one of the next items. I do have an update on the coastal trail.
Any other thoughts or comments from the committee? Anything public comment?
If you think of anything else from the committee with regards to this draft document, you can send me an email, but you're also welcome to write to respond as an individual.
Great, thank you. Well, seeing no further comments, I think we move on to the next agenda items, which is 3D, the grants update.
Thank you. That'll be me. Just a couple of updates on the grants. We heard back from the ATP Cycle 6. Unfortunately, we had 2 applications that unfortunately neither one was made the cut to move to the next round with regards to the statewide ATP cycle. The 2 projects we had were, the first one was a planning application for the East Side Parallel Trail expansion from Higgins Canyon Road to Moonridge. And then the other one was additional funding for improvements at Highway 1 and Russo Francais with regards to the expansion of the trail, as well as operational improvements at the intersection. Although we did not get the statewide, there is a MTC, a Metropolitan Transportation Commission pot of funding. So our applications are now being reviewed against the 9 Bay Area counties and not statewide. A lot of the areas where we missed points were the disadvantaged community point system. They did want to, statewide did really want to focus funding in some of those low income areas. And although we have pockets, overall, we don't meet the thresholds that some of the jurisdictions in Southern California meet. But anyways, we still have another opportunity, so we'll see. I think that one, I believe we're going to hear in the next, I think sometime early next year, as far as the selection from that regional pot. We also, so we started a little late today. Apologies on that. The rationale actually was that the San Mateo Transportation, SMCTA, San Mateo Transportation. I'm blanking out on that acronym.
Authority?
Yes, the Transportation Authority. Thank you. They actually had a first reading on the list of projects for their Cycle 6 call for bike ped program projects, and the city submitted an application for the East Side Parallel Trail Segment 4, which is the segment that's just south of the currently under construction multimodal trail by the county, and which connects to Rocket Farms, which is an existing Class 1 on the east side. So there was two options that staff provided to the board. The first one was to move forward with what was subscribed, with as far as the amount of funding that was available, which actually left our project off the list of awarded projects. And then the option 2 was to utilize projections for future revenues. They do these calls for every couple of years, so a lot of times the amount of money that they have at the time of the call, by the time they see the funds coming through, they're actually a little bit more. And so the second option that the staff actually recommended was to award a little bit more, put a little bit more of those future projected funds towards this call, and award a few more projects that were ranked highly and just below the threshold that met the original line. So there was a county project, there was I believe a project from Pacifica, and then our Half Moon Bay project. It was an informational item and they did not vote on it, but all the board members did support option 2, which would include the funding we need for that project. And what that does for us is actually provides the amount of funding we need to complete that gap. So I believe their next meeting will be in early December. And at that point, they would vote on which option they're going to go with. And based on the feedback we received, it seems like they're going to go with option 2. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that nothing changes between now and December. And then we'll have more update for you guys at that point. As far as other grants, I think those were the big ones that are coming up. There's a couple other grants that are coming down the line that we're looking at. And we'll keep you guys posted. But for the moment, that's it. Any questions on any grant opportunities? Anything that I didn't go over?
Thank you, Maz. Any questions from the group? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is our 3E, State Parks Repair Trail Closure.
Thank you, Chair. All right, last item of the night. Hello again. So I'm here to talk about the culvert repair. And keep in mind, it is a state parks project. We're happy to answer as many questions as we possibly can, but just a heads up, it is a state parks project, so we might not fully have the answer. And in addition to that, this was presented to the City Council as a city manager update earlier this week by Associate Planner Scott Phillips. So we're just kind of reiterating what he mentioned, mainly because this does have an effect on the coastal trail north side of town. So for an overview, we'll just talk about the
Jonathan, if you don't
wrong screen.
Jonathan, if you don't mind, can I just say one thing before you jump in?
Okay.
So as well as the city manager update at council earlier this week, this project did go to our planning commission in October. They do require a coastal development permit for this project, and it is within the city's boundaries. So at that time, it was actually continued because we didn't have enough information on some of the hydraulic and biological impacts. So that's why it's still being discussed and reviewed. So I'm sorry, Jonathan, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Sorry about that. Once you said that, I thought I was sharing the wrong screen, actually. So, and then I checked we're on the right screen. So, yeah, so just an overview. We'll just talk about the location, the reasoning for why the project is, called for, scope of work of that project, and what the current progress is at this time. So, location right now is on the north side of town. I'm not too sure if others are aware, but it's where the Pullman ditch is, pretty close to where East Side Parallel Segment 4 is, just a little bit west, where we have Roosevelt and Washington, the Miramar subdivision. And just south of that, we have the Pullman ditch, where when we get closer towards the coastal trail, you kind of see on the left side of your screen a little blown up picture. You see a little orange tape around it. That section over there is actually eroding because of just natural natural erosion, as well as there's a culvert over there too, which is also failing as well due to that erosion too. So kind of reiterating the reason for that project is to repair that culvert due to its failure, as well as to repair the road as it's failing and eroding, and eventually it's getting closer and closer to the coastal trail, becoming more and more unsafe for pedestrians and bicyclists along that trail. I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because this slide's talking more about scope of work, which is to repair that culvert as well as repair that failed roadway section, which the state park has closed that section down to the parking lot. So the current progress that we have right now, and Maz kind of mentioned, it was presented to the Planning Commission back in October, and the decision from that meeting was to continue the hearing to a date uncertain because we were needing of updated plans and a hydrological analysis for those new improvements, as well as providing a detour plan and a coastal trail access at this time, since it will affect the coastal trail. In addition to that, city staff would like to see an estimated construction timeline for that project as well, which is all reasons to why it was continued to a date uncertain. So again, this is a state parks project, so there's a possibility that we can't answer all the questions that you may have, but we'd be happy to attempt to do so and pass on questions if anything.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I'll just add one last piece before you guys get into your comments and questions. And the rationale for bringing this project to this BPAC is the closure to the bike trail. There is not a it's not a very direct path. There's a lot of sensitive habitat, so will not be able to establish a temporary pathway near the existing. So when they're doing the construction, the bike path would be closed as well. And that was one of the reasons why it was continued, was because there was no real closure plan that was provided as part of that submittal from the state parks.
Thank you, Jonathan and Maz. Questions from the group? All right, seeing none, fairly straightforward presentation, and thanks for bringing it to our attention. So with that, we wrapped up all the agenda items and we move to Roman numeral 4, the director's announcements.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of little ones. The first one is I have sent another communication to Caltrans with regards to Kelly Avenue and Highway 1 and the temporary signals. I still haven't heard anything from them. The maintenance staff folks that I had in contact are no longer working at this at our yard down here, and so I'm trying to figure out who our new contact is. But I've completed the requests. Caltrans has a maintenance request page that you can actually submit directly to them. And I've done that a couple of times and reached out to some other folks, but unfortunately no updates to share yet, but still working on it. So just wanted to let you guys know on that. There was some correspondence from an individual that actually is outside of our jurisdiction. And he was asking about specific correspondence that we receive with regards to accidents and specifically bike accidents. And so we wanted to just kind of mention that with regards to how it works with incidents with regards to especially bikes and pedestrians. Most vehicle accidents reports we receive from the sheriff directly. I usually get most of them. And any from major vehicular accidents, but any pedestrian or bicycle accident usually gets automatically forwarded to us. We've made that request with the sheriff. Those are the ones that are really important for us. Not to say that the other ones are not, but generally when we have a bicycle pedestrian involved with a vehicular accident, those are the ones we really want to take a look at as quickly as possible. So just that was something we shared with this individual, Mr. Mike Swires, and just wanted to reiterate that we had that communication, and that's our protocol as far as getting traffic accident reports. Although we did not get a report, I also wanted to acknowledge there was an accident on the Naomi Patridge Trail next to Kehoe, around the Coastside County Water District project. One of our committee members unfortunately was injured. Janet, I'm so glad to see that you're doing well. But yeah, it was really sad and scary when I heard about it. But we're trying to work with the district on fixing that up. They've made some changes to the signage, and we're also urging them to hurry up and get out of there as fast as they possibly can. So that's also a very important piece, because there just isn't a lot of real estate over there, and we just need, so we just really need them to finish up, and they're getting close. So.
Okay.
But yeah, that was really unfortunate, and I'm thankful that Commissioner Brave Dupree is here with us tonight.
Thank you.
And that's it for my director reports. If I'm sorry, I will give another update. So we are looking at getting a crack seal contractor to come out and do some crack sealing of our coastal trail as well as the Poplar Pathway Trail. So our plan is for the immediate future to do some crack sealing and address the areas where we have water infiltration into our base material. And then the next piece is we have a project in our CIP that we're going to start on the design end and look at construction in the spring to repair some of the damaged areas from the erosion on the bluffs where we've lost some of our pathway. So we're looking at relocating some of that slightly more inland in areas where we've had erosion, as well as doing an overlay and base repair project and striping. So the centerline striping has been something that's been brought up on many meetings. So with that news, with that project to repair the surface, we'll also look at putting the centerline striping on that coastal trail segment. There's a number of other projects that we can go over as well, but I just because that came up, I just wanted to bring that up as well for tonight's meeting. But yeah, happy to answer any questions. And we do have one hand raised in the attendees I see, if anybody wants to call on that.
Great, thank you, Maz. Comments or questions from the committee? All right, seeing none, we'll turn to the public comment.
I've moved Michelle over to panelists. So Michelle, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the culvert repair. I actually did a map on my website. So it's in the top feed. It gives you an idea of what the detour is going to look like. It's going to be a long one, along Highway 1 with K-rails, just like the bridge, only longer, like twice as long. That's the only solution. It's going to have to happen with the construction. It'll have to happen with an outage, but it's going to have to happen. So that's the last part of the plan. So have a look at that map and you guys figure out whether or not it's a good idea or not. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Michelle.
When would we have access to that map?
Just go to Coastside Buzz and put in Pullman Ditch.
Okay.
It's on the homepage though.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I thank you, Michelle. I did take a look at that. I think you emailed it to me separately, or maybe I got the news blast from Coastside Buzz. But yeah, we haven't seen anything. I don't know if I've seen anything official from state parks, but yeah, looking at the map and what Michelle has, there isn't a lot of space. I'm also hoping that there is a phasing alternative that they can do where they can maybe work on maybe only take up half the pathway while they're redoing this. They're doing these improvements to replace the culvert, but again, we'll wait to see what the state parks engineers come back with.
All right, thank you, Maz. Well, we've reached the end of the agenda for this evening. And so I guess we can wrap it up. So thanks, everyone. Great meeting. Enjoyed everybody's comments and participation. We won't see each other again until next year. So I believe that was the January 5th, 2023 meeting. So if we don't see any of you in town, happy holidays, be safe. And I guess we'll see you all next year. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.
Recording.